Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is enjoying their Sunday. I don't like it with the big, big, monitor. Yeah, let's just keep it blurry. I feel like that's a much better way of approaching this. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone is enjoying their weekend. I know that I am. Find a way to get back. I'm working with condensed. Actually, if I can. Oh, that's better. Oh, look at me. Oh, that's a much wider space. That doesn't seem so in your face the way it was before. People are having trouble. I've been having trouble with my audio ever since I moved over to Windows 10. Not exactly sure what the issue is. I'm gonna go ahead and pump up the levels here. Hopefully this should help. Yeah, I don't know. Ever since I moved over to Windows 10, the audio has been causing all sorts of problems. Pinball RJ, I wouldn't even sell you cigarettes. I wouldn't sell me alcohol. I wouldn't sell you cigarettes. I wouldn't do anything to me. I would mostly tell, are you capable of driving? Yeah, I'm not sure. Anyway, this is a Q&A session before we jump into finishing off Undertale. So if you have any sort of questions about the industry, I cannot answer any questions regarding the lawsuit involving Mr. Hulk Hogan and Gawker Media. That is an ongoing litigation that I cannot comment on. So while I appreciate everyone's words of support, that is not actually something that we can get into the nitty-gritty on here. But thanks for people that have supported my work and continue to support my work. That is the most that you can do in this situation, and I sincerely appreciate it. Let's see. W. Matthew, what do you think of so many big publishers leaving E3, and are E3's days numbered, or can it adapt? It's really interesting to see what's been happening with E3 the last couple of months or so, in which you have companies like Electronic Arts and Activision saying, we're just not going to have a presence on the show floor. We're actually just going to do events outside or show them in private meetings. I think that has to worry E3 quite a bit. It doesn't really bother me a whole lot. Like the fact that E3 does or doesn't exist is immaterial to my interest in the industry or me doing my job. It is more or less just a thing that is changing. It's not going to surprise me if E3 decides to open themselves to the public, if they sell tickets or allow some way of getting fans involved in the event. That seems like a very natural progression of E3. It moves it away from a trade event. You know, the E3's roots are being part of retail, are about publishers meeting with retail and, you know, pitching them on the big games that are coming out. And that stuff just isn't happening as much anymore. And so it makes sense that E3 is going to adapt as well. And if E3 wants to continue to be sort of the center of conversation, it's going to have to change with the times. You know, I don't know if necessarily inviting fans is the way to do that, but it is certainly a step where they can move more in line with the other video game events. The question then becomes how long, you know, really E3 will continue to be relevant if the biggest game announcements of the year happen at E3 every single year. So if E3 as a trade show becomes less relevant, but E3 as a news-making machine continues to be relevant, then E3, you know, by most regards, for most of the reason that a lot of us tune in, that will continue to be of interest. You know, I'm still going to want to watch the press conferences. I'm still going to want to see what every publisher has to say. So what happens on the show floor means a lot less than the things that are happening outside of it, and maybe that is at the root cause to begin with of why E3 is sort of a complicated beast. Is that it was the biggest part of E3 was always happening outside of E3 itself. They were E3 press conferences, but they weren't actually in the doors of E3, and so I don't see that changing anytime soon. That has just become such a convention of the video game industry that it's hard for me to imagine they're suddenly going to stop having E3 press conferences. Because part of why they work is that they all happen at the same time. All the companies are kind of lined up next to each other. All the hardware manufacturers are being compared to one another. Oh, they won E3. Oh, they lost E3. Oh, they're upping each other. They're one-upping each other. Like, that competitive aspect is a huge part of the appeal of the event. And I guess if they all decided to switch to, well, we're doing it 2 weeks later and just not doing E3, that'd be fine. But I think they collectively benefit from having a microscope on the industry and excitement, a hype around the industry. So E3 benefits the video game companies involved as much as it benefits the E3 as, you know, the trade show in a larger context. Poke3, I just finished watching your Dark Souls 2 playthrough after having finished the game myself. Any plans to finish the DLC? The Slumbering Dragon awaits. Yes, I would absolutely love to continue playing through Dark Souls 2. My hope was that I could find a way to play the rest of Dark Souls 2's DLC, Dark Souls 2's DLC, and then write a big article that is essentially encompassing my series-wide feelings on the Souls series, from Demon Souls to Bloodborne. And that I feel like includes having to play the DLC, because so many people have told me the DLC is so much better. And my own experience with the DLC was that it was significantly better than the base game. Now, I know there are people out there that like Dark Souls 2, and I'm not even saying Dark Souls 2 is a bad game, but I don't find Dark Souls 2 to be particularly memorable. But the DLC was pretty memorable. It was just unique. It was fun. It was exciting. And I got up to a dragon that kicked my butt before I put it down, and I just haven't had a chance to go back to it since. So my hope is, yes, that I'm going to play more Dark Souls 2, finish out that DLC so that I can write this comprehensive piece about the series before Dark Souls 3 arrives in April, which I'm tremendously excited for. I haven't quite figured out exactly how I'm going to handle covering that. I know people do like watching Souls streams. I'm probably going to get a copy of the game in advance, so my guess is that I am going to be playing it, a week or two before it is available. But what I might do are record installments of me playing it and put that up after the fact. So it won't be a live stream of me playing Dark Souls 3, but it will be an archive of my playthrough. People seem to enjoy that with Soma, and so I think Dark Souls 3 might be an opportunity to do something like that as well. Asinines? While we were speaking of finishing things, any plans on finishing the last bit of Undertale? The ending is really nice, and I think you'd like it. Actually, that's what we're going to do right after this. The plan after I answer your questions for the next 10, 15 minutes is that we're going to load up Undertale, we're going to go talk to some people, and we're going to see that ending. So people have been saying, look, I really just want to see that epilogue with you. I've been on that journey from the beginning. I want to see the last pieces, and so we're going to go ahead and do that, and we're going to see the end of Undertale together. So if you want to see that whole piece, that is going to happen in just a little bit. If you're just here for the Q&A, you don't want Undertale spoiled for you, well, then you'll have plenty of time to hop out of here, because we're going to separate those two together. Moosey McMahon, Dark Souls 2 was good but not great, I thought. That was my feelings on it as well. Like, it was competent, it was fine, but it didn't feel like the jump from Demon Souls to Dark Souls. And maybe that is an impossible leap to expect, but I thought that Bloodborne was a similar leap from Dark Souls to Bloodborne, in that they were, shared a common DNA, but they were very different games. And maybe that's part of it, right? Like, maybe the future of the Souls series continuing to be inventive and exciting is that you have to kind of keep that core, but then modify it in a significant way. And Bloodborne, I think, modified it in a significant way while also being incredibly familiar to people who had played previous Souls games. Arcana Art, Patrick, how old are you? My driver's license says I'm 31. My birth certificate says I'm 31. But I think the average eye would suggest I am 14 or 15. So it just depends. Do you feel like you want to follow it on legal grounds, or do you just follow it on what your eyes tell you? Because they're different things. They're wildly different things. TIE Fighter 57. Was the WWE backstage stuff with Dan filmed and put up somewhere? There's a video of us, hanging out with the New Day and Xavier Woods. But outside of that, we were not allowed to film any of what we did backstage at WWE. It was very sensitive. They were very cool about us being there. But, there are conversations about storylines and things that are happening in WWE. And so we were a guest of WWE, and we tried to be respectful of that. We didn't take any photos. We didn't take any videos. We really wanted to. Believe me, we really, really wanted to. I would really like to have taken a picture with Goldust talking about Skyrim, but we had to respect the boundaries that were put in place, and so we just kind of were like flies on the wall and did the things that we were allowed to, and otherwise just tried to be respectful of everything that was going on there. That said, I do have a book report to write that I'm going to get to in the next couple of days, and maybe I'll have some more thoughts to share about what went on backstage at WWE, because there are things I can talk about that I haven't quite yet that I really want to talk about. So stay tuned for that. Waffle Irony. Have anything with the McElroys coming up in the future? No, I don't have any planned collaborations with the McElroys, but I'm a huge fan of all the work that they do, and it was a pleasure to meet them in Chicago when they came through last year as part of their live show. And I'd love to do something with them in the future. And I do have an idea. I do have an idea. I'm going to go ahead and file that one away right now, but to be determined. Did you genuinely enjoy the show? I presume you mean WWE. I did. Yeah, I was a fan of wrestling of the past. It's just not something that has maintained my interest as the years have gone on. But I definitely enjoyed my time there. Plus, you have enough beer, everything's fun. I mean, that's just how it works. Angel Extreme buying a new house, start a family. With part of the reason we moved out of downtown Chicago into the suburbs of Chicago was to stay with my mom, hunker down, save some last minute money, and hopefully buy a house sometime this year. I don't know. It's not necessarily a planned thing. It's more just like it'll make sense when it makes sense. So it is something we're looking into, and I hope I can say I'm a homeowner at the end of the year, but you never know how things are going to go. Canorock, any interest in Salt and Sanctuary? A huge amount of it. Oh, I saw you. Everyone saw you. Well, I don't even know what I was. Salt and Sanctuary. Yes. I've played about 3 or 4 hours of it. I wrote about it for Kotaku recently. Tremendously enjoyed what is essentially a 2D Dark Souls. And I highly recommend people check it out. If you do like Dark Souls, I think you're going to enjoy Salt and Sanctuary quite a bit. I've heard some people say that it kind of bothers them how much it kind of takes whole cloth design from the Souls games. I don't think those developers would say anything but that. I think they're well aware that they are making something that is incredibly Souls-like. It is actually kind of remarkable how Souls-like it is. I was impressed and also surprised how deep they went on that stuff. But if you are, chomping at the bit for Dark Souls 3 and it's not here yet, Salt and Sanctuary is a good holdover. The PC version is coming sometime later this year. They haven't said exactly when, but the PS4 version and the Vita version, which are out now, are both terrific. Or I guess I shouldn't say I know if the Vita version is terrific. Haven't had a chance to play it, but the PS4 one, just other than some frame rate hiccups, is I'm really enjoying it. I'm hoping to play more of it in the weeks to come. Right now, I'm actually really deep in the Division. That's what I've spent most of this weekend playing. I'm level 15. It seems like I'm about halfway through the story. I spent an hour or two in the Dark Zone. That game, its story doesn't do a whole lot for me, but it just feels so good to play. And the way you level up and the way that you get new gear, like, is in a measured way. It just feels like I'm getting a lot of stuff, but it's not overwhelming. And the gunplay it just feels so good in it that component alone is hooking me into continuing to play more and more of the Division. So that's kind of my game right now. While on the side, I'm playing Salt and Sanctuary. I do want to play Fire Emblem, but after XCOM 2, I need a break from strategy games. I just can't jump right into another one right away, but my hope is to get in there again. Musings, man, I'm so bummed that Dark Souls 3 is apparently out this week in Japan, but we have to wait a few more weeks. Absolutely. It's going to bum. I'm going to have to try really, it's my journalistic duty to see what kind of comes out of the Japanese version of Dark Souls 3, but I also want to try and maintain my purity and not have too much of that spoiled. So that is going to be a fine balance that I'm sure is going to be difficult for a lot of Souls fans. And it was funny watching the Dark Souls 3 subreddit where they have set up another subreddit that is just to discuss the Japanese version so that people that don't want to be spoiled don't have to worry about that possibly happening in the future. As Brozik, how does Microsoft host a Women in Games event and spotlight girls make games and then throw a developer party with sexy go-go dancers on the same day? How does that even happen? It's baffling. It's, I think if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, it was just an oversight in which whoever was involved in that party just did not. There clearly wasn't someone looking at all the connective tissue of what was happening. And that leads to what you hope is just an oversight. The reactions from Phil Spencer, the reactions from Aaron Greenberg suggest that there are people who are deeply upset about the image that portrays for a company that is trying to extend outreach, that is trying to promote inclusivity. It's unfortunate. It's a bummer for the people that were there, that were trying to network, and they felt uncomfortable. It's a bummer that these things are still happening. This happened all the time in the 90s and in the aughts, as the games industry was first becoming aware that maybe this sends a bad image to a wider group of people that might want to be involved in video games. So for that to be happening in 2016 on that same day as Microsoft hosting a number of Women in Games events, it's just baffling. And you hope that the public scrutiny from an event like this means that they're going to take it seriously, going to take the steps necessary to make sure stuff like that doesn't happen in the future. Because what it ends up doing is it makes it seem like their outreach isn't genuine, that their outreach is purely to check a box, that their outreach is only because, well, this is what the industry is doing right now. Got to make sure we talk to these women and say that we did it. Hooray. And then when stuff like this party happens, which is a networking event where people are supposed to feel comfortable and associate with the brand, it sends the message that actually it is just a checkbox and that it is just the industry or Microsoft kind of going, well, we've got to do this. So now we've done it. Hooray, pat on the back. But that's not actually how we feel, and we don't actually care that much. So that's where that comes from, and that's where it becomes an issue where it undercuts the potential for their message to be genuine. And the response did seem genuine, but the thing is, it happened. And you're not going to get a pat on the back because you don't do it again. You've really got to earn that credibility sustained over time. And, it'd be, we'll see if that actually happens. So. Spaghetti Sunday. Patrick, is it safe to say your PlayStation 4.5 story is one of your biggest scoops? It's probably in the top 5. It's probably lower in the top 5. The Infinity Ward news piece, an ongoing reporting, because that kind of really went on for a couple of weeks. It was probably the most substantive piece of news that I've had a chance to break and be deeply involved in. That's probably the Xbox One DRM story, and then it's I guess maybe this might come after. And but what's different about this story is it's something that I don't do a whole lot of. Usually when I'm reporting a big piece, it is something immediate and fact-checkable to a wider audience, right? Like the Infinity Ward stuff came from my own sources, and then also an SEC document in which Activision outlined a little bit of what had happened between Vince Zampella and Infinity Ward and Activision leadership. With the Xbox One DRM stuff, there was an official press release from Microsoft immediately following my report being broken because I knew that news release was coming. It's part of the timing of my report. With this one, I heard, along with other Kotaku reporters, information about a potential PlayStation 4.5, as we've dubbed it, and as some developers have dubbed it, and also my dogs have dubbed it. They agree. They believe my reporting is accurate. That's probably going to happen more than once. The dogs like to yap. So that said, it's possible I'm wrong. It's possible plans will change. It's possible this thing never ships. But I wouldn't have written the story if I didn't think it was worth telling. I wouldn't have written it unless I felt confident that my sources were telling me what is truthful at the time. I wouldn't have written it to get clicks because I don't need to do that. I don't get a bonus for writing stories that make ad revenue. Pixel. And that's, what I tried to do was I heard something the people around me heard something, and we wanted to give a window into a conversation that is happening in the video game industry. It could change. We could be wrong. It won't be, if we're wrong, it won't be because we were wrong at the time. It'll be because things changed. I do think the report I have passed on about a upgraded PlayStation is accurate at the moment. There was enough evidence to make it seem substantial to pass it on. And also, I think it's an interesting conversation piece because regardless of what Sony ends up doing, regardless of what Microsoft ends up doing, there are very real conversations happening at both of those companies that aren't just conversations. There is hardware being built. There are test kits being built. There's documentation that exists talking about these machines. I know more about what Sony's plans are than Microsoft, but I, as mentioned in my story, have heard whispers for months now about what Microsoft is also up to as well. And so, again, it can change, but I think to have the conversation about what does it mean for consoles to get upgraded mid-cycle, what are the consequences of that, is a conversation that game players should have. And that's why I wanted to have that conversation. Like, part of my reporting was to say, look, here's what's happening right now, so far as we can tell. What do you think about that? Because it allows players to get their feedback into this while it's still ongoing. And if you think that Sony isn't deeply paying attention to what people are saying in message boards and comment threads, you're kidding yourself. They are looking at that obsessively. That doesn't mean that their plans will change, but it does mean that players get to participate in that process as a result of the reporting done by myself, by Jason, by Steven Totillo, and I feel like that is worthwhile. I feel like that is part of my job, is to not only pull the veil back on what is happening in the industry, but allow consumers, fans, enthusiasts to be part of that process. And this is an instance in which I feel like you get to do that. You get to participate by commenting, by sharing your ideas, and I think, in some level, informing the decisions that Sony and Microsoft make going forward. So again, like I said, I could be wrong. I don't want to be wrong. Part of my reputation is built on not being wrong. But I feel I am right at the time, and if things change, hopefully I can report how that stuff changes as well. But for people who don't want to believe me, for people that don't think my reputation precedes me or doesn't give me an ounce to work with, if things do change, that will be used as you misheard. It's like, well, I didn't necessarily mishear. That is what I was hearing at the time, and things can change. So we'll see how that all goes. I wish I had more details to share about it. I'm hoping to spend the next couple of weeks, the next couple of months, working with Jason, Steven, and everyone else at Kotaku and Keza McDonald, who played an integral role in making us feel more comfortable with the piece when she overheard similar details without even knowing that we were looking into it at GDC in San Francisco. And we hope to be able to share more with you in the future. There are no guarantees there, but hopefully that happens. And if we do, well, you'll hear about it from us first. Saucy Pigeon, you're going to do a write-up on the Coleco Chameleon stuff. I have heard about that. I haven't had a chance to investigate it. I know that Jason was looking into it. I'll see what I can find out about where our reporting is on that and if we're going to be writing anything, but I don't have anything to share at this time. Shoto Drag, your thoughts on the possible NX picks leaks or just the NX in general? I don't know what to think about that image. It could be right. It could be wrong. I remember famously decrying the PlayStation 3 Slim on a 1UP podcast because there were some weird grainy photos that came out of, I think, Asia at the time, maybe Hong Kong, and I dismissed them because I was like, those photos look fake. Like, that thing's not real. And then it was announced like not long after. So, that was not, my dismissal was because I didn't have any information. And so the NX stuff I can't really comment on. I can only speculate along with all of you because I actually have no idea either what's going on with the NX. I have no sources that are particularly close to Nintendo. I have no sources that have even heard whispers about what Nintendo is up to. So unfortunately, I wish I could disclose anything or even hint or even wink at what Nintendo might be up to with the NX. But really, just about as much as I do. And depending on if you believe some of the rumors, maybe you know more because I try and if I don't know it myself, I tend to not take that stuff too seriously, if only because it forces me to double down on investigating things on my own, finding out information on my own, and that is important to me. It forces me to try and find things that can hopefully better inform my own reporting and my own view of the industry, but then also to try and better inform all of you and everyone else as well. Let's see. Frozen Peppers, how do you feel about the way your Fire Emblem Fates localization story was received? Now, I guess it depends on which story you're talking about. I've written a number of pieces about Fire Emblem Fates. The two pieces I wrote most recently were about the team that was trying to localize the game as soon as it was released in Japan, both as a way of playing the game ahead of its American release and also as a competing localization that had ideological problems with the way Treehouse, their Nintendo's internal translation studio, has handled various translations in the past couple of years, specifically with material being changed, whether it's costumes or certain lines of dialogue or plot lines that are deemed to be inappropriate for the Western audience. I thought that story was received just fine, that one that was about the competing localization team. All I was doing was showing what they were doing, and that one didn't have a whole lot of commentary from me. It was more of a kind of straightforward piece about here's what's happening in the community of Fire Emblem. The second piece, which was about Alison Rapp and the character assassination attempts to discredit her through a college essay. That one was, the reception of that was a lot harsher because it shined a light on some very toxic and disgusting circles in the internet. And those people don't like it when a light is shined there because it displays in clear view what they're doing. And what they were doing to Alison Rapp, a woman that works at Nintendo, that works in Treehouse, but does not work on localization, has had no interaction with Xenoblade Chronicles X, no interaction with Fire Emblem Fates, no interaction with any of the games that certain groups have decided show an infiltration of social justice warriors within the Nintendo establishment. She had nothing to do with that, and yet they spent hours trying to discredit her while she was on her honeymoon in Japan. It was not that part was not in my piece, but it was something that really stuck in my craw, that it just seemed like such a blatant attempt to try and hurt someone and to tear them down. And what I tried to show in the story was that, whether you consider that Gamergate or something else, the group itself doesn't matter. It's the tactics that have been established to systemically dismantle someone by discrediting them using whatever information possible, whether it is current or in the past, in which anything you've ever said, if anything is outside the norm, if you've ever made an extreme statement, it is used to bash you today, in the present. And I find that troubling. I find that really tough for discourse in 2016. And so my hope was to, I think a lot of people feel like, oh, Gamergate's not a thing anymore. And in many ways, like, quote unquote, Gamergate isn't as much of a thing as it used to be in the past. But these tactics are being deployed in different ways for different means under different groups, or even no group entirely. I think the Fire Emblem thing, like, you couldn't holistically put that under a group. It was very amorphous. And so what was important there was not about the individual people, the individual actors. It was specifically about the approach taken by groups in order to discredit people and to show that this is happening. It's still happening. It will probably happen again. And I intend to keep a close eye on it because I am bothered by it. And I want to continue to show where these things are occurring, why they're occurring, and what the underlying symptoms are. Unfortunately, what my stories don't do are come up with solutions to this. And that continues to be a problem, not only with my own reporting, with my own analysis, but with the internet writ large, is what do you do about this? It's happening. It's terrible. But what can we actually do? And I unfortunately don't have a lot of answers to that. And I wish that's something I could change. And it's going to be a part of my reporting is hopefully trying to move in that direction. I'd love to do some in-depth reporting on how the internet addresses this. Are there ways to do it? And I don't have those answers right now. All right. Well, let's go ahead and answer one or two more questions, and then we're going to jump into Undertale So if you want to get something in now, if you're a subscriber to the channel, you get first dibs. If you got my dumb face next to your great name, then you'll get an opportunity to ask your question first. You get preferential treatment. Yeah, let's go ahead and answer one or two more, and then let's play some Undertale. See, I'm scrolling up, see if there's anything big I might have missed. Let's see. Angel Extreme. Should Nintendo join the VR fad? I doubt it. I don't think Nintendo needs to. They don't compete on that kind of technology. I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo is interested in some sort of tech. Nintendo seems like they might be more of an AR company, right? Like, you know, you look at Pokemon Go or whatever that mobile game that they're making. Like, I could see them playing with different technology in that way. But I really, Nintendo is inherently a social company, and VR can be a social experience, but I think Nintendo is going to look at VR technology as it is right now and see that as an antisocial experience. And so I just don't see them doing that. I'd love to see what they did with VR, you know, like if they were a third party and maybe they had an interest in toying with VR. My guess is they've done VR experiments, but I really would be genuinely surprised if that's something, a road they went down, because it just doesn't seem to line up with the technology as it is, in line with their company's values. As Fisk points out, Nintendo did release the Virtual Boy, but as he also points out, I don't think they're going to re-release it. I think if they ever get involved in VR or AR, I think it's going to be down the line. It's going to be when that technology matures, and it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. R-Bracer69, when will PS4 and Xbox be able to play cross-platform games? I suppose maybe you're asking if you buy a game on one platform, it'll work on the other. I don't think that's ever going to happen, but it does seem like we are going to move in a direction where it's possible for multiplayer to cross different network services. Microsoft has said they're willing to have games open up and operate cross between Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Whether Sony chooses to engage with that, I don't know, but that sure would be great if, you know, in Call of Duty, everyone could just be in the same player pool. That just seems like a win for game players. And so whether that happens, I'm not sure, but I sure hope it does. Johnny Warps, are you planning to branch out more with your Let's Plays? I love Mario Maker more than 60 videos, and it's gotten a little old. I'd love to see more different stuff. Yeah, I definitely want to expand. You know, we're going to start playing a bunch of Stardew Valley. That's kind of the new Tuesday, Thursday game, at least for the next month or so. I'd love to experiment and play with that game. But I think the idea is to kind of, you know, mix that up. Darkest Dungeon. I've always wanted to do a second playthrough of Until Dawn with my wife so that we could have people in the chat help explain or come up with some of the decisions that we're going to make. That's just something we haven't had time for because our life has been really busy lately. But I would love to replay Until Dawn with the two of us. I think that'd be so much fun with the chat. So, you know, keep that in mind. But I'm definitely open to suggestions. If there's games you think that'd be a lot of fun to play, let me know, because it's always an open conversation with you and me about what games we end up playing. Chris Wasey, did I miss Undertale? No, you did not. In fact, on that note, we are going to go ahead and jump into Undertale. So if you were just here for the Q&A, if you don't want to see the ending of Undertale, because this is going to be the end of Undertale, please stop watching the stream. If you enjoyed the Q&A, thanks so much for tuning in. Like I said, if you're a subscriber, you get preferential treatment on those questions. So you can subscribe over in the corner, or you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. Either way, I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and start booting up Undertale. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, that's awesome. I'm happy for you. There's tons of other stuff around here. You might have watched me die tomorrow. You might have watched me scream at horror games. You might have watched me react to trailers with my wife. You might have watched me share some of the coolest video games out there you've never heard of. There's lots going on the site. YouTube, so that means what? You have to like, you have to comment, you have to subscribe. All those things help the channel. All those things help me, and I really appreciate if you become part of the community over here. Thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in another one.